Hi everyone, here at the Australian Armour and Artillery Museum during AusArmourFest 2024, and we're taking a look today at an armoured vehicle from the Red Army that was used by the Soviets late in World War II. And this is the SU-100 self-propelled anti-tank gun. So this was a vehicle that was developed late in World War II to counter the threat of heavier German tanks that started to appear from the middle of World War II through to the end. Now, at the start of the Russo-German War in June 1941, the contemporary Soviet tanks such as the T-34 and the KV-1 with the 76.2mm main gun had adequate firepower to defeat any of the German tanks that were then available. So tanks like the Panzer III, which had 50mm of armour, tanks like the Panzer 38T could be handled by that gun. The Soviet tanks had other issues, but at least in terms of gun versus armour, they were adequate. However, from the fall of 1942, heavier German tanks began to appear on the Eastern Front, such as the Tiger I, and the Soviet High Command realized that there was more heavy German tanks coming to the field, and that they would have to do something to counter them with a more powerful main gun for their armored formations. So May 43, they started work on a new anti-tank gun that was based on the 85mm anti-aircraft gun that was in Russian service. This gun was much too large, however, for the existing turrets on the T-34 and the KV-1. But as a stopgap solution, they tried to get that gun mounted into a tank destroyer that was based on the chassis of the T-34. There was already a howitzer that had been developed to travel along with armoured formations, a mobile howitzer called the SU-100 that used a casemate style citadel based on the T-34 chassis. So they took that casemate idea from the SU-100 howitzer and mounted this 85mm gun into that casemate. So the Uralmash factory took on the task of manufacturing that new vehicle, and it resulted in a well-armoured, highly mobile tank destroyer that entered service in August 1943, termed the SU-85. However, as the war progressed, more information coming out about even heavier German tanks coming, such as the Panther. And so once that 85mm gun that was originally in the SU-85 was available in the T-34, so the T-34-85, which entered production in 1944, it was felt that they needed to further upgrade their tank destroyer capability to mount an even bigger gun. And that's the vehicle that you see here. This is the SU-100, which mounted a 100mm anti-tank gun. Now that tank gun was termed the D-10S, and that could penetrate virtually any German tank that was in service up until the end of the war. So it could penetrate the frontal armour of a Tiger I at 2,000 metres range with its armour-piercing ballistic capped round, and it could penetrate over 200mm of armour with its armour-piercing high explosive rounds. So a very effective gun. And the gun went on to have life after World War II, both in this vehicle, but also in the T-54 and T-55. So it went on to equip Russia's main battle tanks. So if we have a look there, you can see the hatch that was for the driver. So that's the same hatch that was on the T-34. And you see a very similar layout to the T-34, except the front arm has been just replaced with a piece of sloped armour. And in the case of the SU-100, that armour was 75mm upgraded from 45mm in the SU-85. Now if we take a look in that hatch, you can see some of the details that are inside. You can see there's some racks for storing the 100mm ammunition. That red topped lever there is the gear change. There's the driver's seat. Controls for the driver off on his left. Get a bit of a look over at the gun. Let's just see, you might be able to see, yeah, there's some of the elevation and depression and traverse controls for the gunner. You can see the gunner's seat there folded up and the loader's seat in the back. So that's some of the interior details. So yeah, casemate style tank destroyer built late in the war. You can see the suspension here is typical T-34 base suspension, which was a Christie suspension. So each of the double road wheels, 5 per side, is mounted on a swing arm that connects to a coil spring that controls its articulation. The wheels you can see here, interestingly, they're a late war pattern, of course, 1945 pattern cast wheels with rubber lining. There's the drive wheel at the rear, which is different to a typical sprocket. It engages the horns, which are part of the tracks, 500mm waffle tracks, and by engaging those horns drives the tank forward. So you've got a rear-mounted engine here, a version of the T-34 engine, the Kharkiv V234, a V12 diesel engine, with a transmission at the rear and the drive at the rear. So at the front there's an idler wheel. So at the back here you see the same sloped type of armour plate that you would have on a T-34 with the same exhaust and access hatches. Looking up at the back of the casemate, there's a vision port for rearward vision for the commander and a pistol port. Just pan up a little bit. The hatch that's there, that's white, that square hatch was off the original SU-100 and it was repurposed as a loader's hatch in this vehicle. The commander for the SU-100 got a cupola on the right there. The two mushroom-shaped armoured protrusions there are the extractor fans, which were redesigned for this heavier gun, which had more gas from the propellant. Down here you can see the five double road wheels per side. Again, Christie suspension, so those wheels are mounted on swing arms that have springs controlling their articulation. Rear tow hooks, standard T-34 type design. So it was built from mid-1944 at the Uralmash factory in Yekaterinburg, entered service October 1944, and about 2,335 were built, and it was made up until the end of World War II in those numbers, and then almost 5,000 were made in total once production continued after the end of the war. There's one of the late war features, which is bosses for the tracks. So important weapon for Russia at the end of World War II, played an important role in the Battle of Berlin because it could take out heavy emplacements and also destroy buildings, and was also used extensively in Hungary. So I think that's all I really want to say about the SU-100, Russian self-propelled anti-tank gun. Thanks for listening to me bang on about this vehicle. I hope you enjoyed the video and appreciate you getting to the end of it. And I look forward to talking to you soon about another armoured vehicle or artillery piece. And until then, please keep well, and we'll talk soon. Thanks.